Finally out of the vault again. After one of the best games ever to be released, it's time to move from the mountains of Elder Scrolls and back into the wasteland. Be ready to call off from work and pass your night against savagery and radiation. I'm Louis and this is Fallout 4. First, I want to start with the problem the Wasteland has. At its current release date, Fallout 4 has a lot of technical issues. During my playthrough, I experienced game crashes, texture loading slowly, textures not loading at all, collision detection, animation problems, random frame dropping, and one blue screen. It is annoying, and Bethesda has now enough experience to have prevented those issues. They shouldn't have known and done better. That being said, Fallout 4 is an amazing game to add to your 2015 collection. It's not only a more refined game, but also a better overall experience than any Fallout games before.
No one has to be anyone's dinner tonight. Truce? Truce.
The space between the third and fourth iteration is as big as Skyrim is to Oblivion. Clever design choices, simplification of features, and a lot, and I mean a lot, of new stuff to do will put you a huge smile on any Vault dweller ready for the harsh wasteland. Smart design choices are in effect everywhere, mostly on the gameplay aspect. We now have a true first-person shooter to enjoy and master. From the horrendous Fallout 3 gentleman shooting and VATS abuse system, we now have a perfectly reliable shooting base that is making you feel in perfect control on the battlefield. It's not as precise or defined as Call of Duty 3 or Battlefield, but it's working very well nonetheless. Bullets will end up where you are aiming, and limb impairment will be a great deal in your firefights. The VATS system is back and makes the player a lot less dependent than before. VATS no longer stops time but slows it down, making you vulnerable in the process. You also have the ability to choose when to put a critical strike from a gauge that fills up on every landed hit. Overall, shooting is now a good and fun thing to do. Moving around and jumping is still a bit stiff, and we can still go all stealthy and land those sneaky attacks. You also have the possibility to bring a companion that will help you in diverse ways. The dog to find enemies or items, as well as keeping the bad guys busy, or Codsworth with his British accent as a fellow family member. You can also make them wear various apparel and give them orders. Don't be shy to bring someone with you against the dangers out there. Lockpicking and hacking at terminals are back and are very useful to get that extra weapon behind locked doors. After creating your character, you will be set in a vault and almost immediately getting out of it. Without spoiling much, your main quest is rather dull and cliché. What is interesting though is what's happening around it. Most of your fun will come from questing for random strangers, destroying raiders' camp and blowing mutants' heads off. A new addition is the protagonist now has a voice, a first in a long time. I was afraid at first, but the voice acting is well made and it's keeping it a neutral tone. A huge disappointment is the lack of conversation. The few choices you have are limited and it's really hard to tell from all the lore for a few sentences on selected characters. Of course, the ambience and environment really tells the sides of both stories.
What kind of stuff do you have?
If it can chamber cock and spit out lead, then I sell it. I sell slashers and clobberers too, for those maniacs that might get up close. But hot death flying faster than the speed of sound? Oh, my knees are getting weak just from thinking about it.
I've got a few minutes to browse.
A part of every big purchase goes to planting little bitty trees that I'll blow up in your honor.
New mechanics has been implemented and upgraded. We now have the ability to construct, manage a lot of settlement. You will all be in charge of providing the settlements of bed, food, water, and defenses. A bit annoying is the amount of time you will have to invest to gather resources, construct the proper items, and make sure everyone has a job to help everyone around. However, there is a huge sense of success when a settlement gets auto-sufficient and just look like a badass place. Resources are now a bigger part of the game. By taking random objects, you will have some component from salvaging them. They're a huge part of the game on knowing those items and managing their weight against what they will provide you. A big mistake is that the emphasis that the game put on this. I usually had to go back to a settlement to dispose of all the items I gather and go back in it. It removes a sense of tension and does feel tedious. It's your responsibility to manage them and make choices of what to bring home. Talking of which, there is no longer a karma system. Your character can be a complete jerk and it won't really affect the flow of the game. It's mostly being really straightforward, giving you a few choices and the current situation. Another thing is that you will feel like you're doing everything by yourself. The world doesn't seem to move much around and you will take much of the burden during your adventure.
I'd love to sit here gabbing all day like a couple of housewives, but we've got some work to do. And by we, I most definitely mean you. Before you...
Fortunately, even if the map is not that big, it is still very dense. You will no longer experience vast desert of emptiness. Everything is much more vivid, compact and filled with activities to do. Even better, it's that everything is mostly very enjoyable to accomplish. You will encounter raid parties, mutant stronghold, infested subways and robot races. It's great and keeps you all the time on your toes. As a Vault Dweller, we no longer have to repair our weapons. Better, we can modify them immensely. From a small laser pistol to a full-on automatic gamma shotgun, the crafting is simple, elegant and really efficient. You can also cook for better and cleaner meals, improve and craft your armors, do some chemicals to have your own medical supplies, and last but not least, modify or recharge your power armors, of which no longer acts as a set of armor, but a full-on little mech that you can bring to battle for the extension of your fusion core. Everything works properly and Bethesda made sure that there is a progression curve. Leveling up is now a lot more simple. We no longer rely on skills, but perks. Every level gained will give you a point that you can be able to spend on abilities or perks. It's all about choices, and Fallout 4 has tons of it. Fallout 4 does not set any standard when it comes to visual. Bland texture, awful face animation, low view distance, no physical damage, and cheap reuse of model is all about but disappointing. However, the colors are excitingly vivid and much more interesting. The wasteland is diverse and beautiful in its hostile environment. It also has a few nice spots, such as the animation of feral ghouls that really feels natural and are scary. The dog attacks are nice too, and the robot does feel like the real thing. It's not atrocious and really doesn't deserve the bad press it got. Finally, the music is astonishing. Combat tunes are exciting and the city settlement ambience really fits the game properly. You will enjoy it and won't need a third-party songs to get you the full immersion. Gun sounds aren't exemplary, but has a distinct feeling to each one of them. Adding to that, the radio available for your Pip-Boy is both awesome and old school with a really awkward broadcaster. Fallout 4 got inspiration from the modding community and gave us tons of new and better things. It's simpler, but put the emphasis on what really matters. After a dozen of hours and still a lot to do, I have no problems going back in and doing everything that requires us. Fallout 4 deserves a 9.4 out of 10. It's another immense success for Bethesda that can't go unnoticed. It's clever, filled with activities and most important, entertaining. The wasteland is filled with radiation, violent raiders and people in need. We are the Minutemens. We have to answer their calls.